Okay, so I think you were told earlier that I want to talk a little bit about college and decisions about making college, and this fits nicely in the midst of the two talks you're getting on finances, because this is probably one of your biggest financial decisions that you're facing in the next few years about whether you do college, what college should look like, how you're going to finance it. And so I thought what I'd like to do is just give you a little bit of inside information, behind the scenes information, what's going on in the college scene, because having stepped into the role of college president, I've spent the last 3.5 years really traveling a lot, seeing other colleges, meeting with other college presidents, and learning a lot about what's going on behind the scenes in the landscape of colleges, particularly Christian colleges. And I think that there's a lot of illusion there that needs to be removed so that you can make an informed decision. Now, I want to give you two big disclaimers at the beginning, okay? And it's really important that you hear this, because some of the stuff I say later might cause questions or objections in your mind, and I want to make sure you hear this first. The first thing is, I don't think everybody should get a college education, okay? It's not for everybody. And frequently when people talk about college, they make it sound like absolutely everybody needs to go to college. If you don't go to college, you're a failure or something like that. I don't think that's the case, okay? There are lots of people for whom college is not the right decision, and there are lots of paths that are faithful, God-honoring, that don't involve going to college, okay? So let's just take that off the table right now. We're not saying that everybody ought to go to college. I do think it's obviously a really fruitful, helpful, huge blessing for a number of people, but I don't think it's mandatory. Second one, I should mention here, I don't think NSA is the only college that anybody ought to go to. We are the best college, there's that. But aside from that, I think that there are a lot of, if you say, like, I know right now that I'm called to be a mechanical engineer, and that's just what I need to be. God came to me in a vision, revealed it to me, gave me my first calculator. If that's the case, NSA is probably not the college for you. And there are a lot of career paths that NSA is probably not the right college for. So let me get those two really important disclaimers out there at the front end, because there might be other options that you need to be thinking about. That said, a lot of the principles I'm going to describe to you are principles that describe why we started NSA, and why we made it the way we made it. You'll see that I think a lot of these principles line up really closely with the same important kind of elements of the DNA at BCS, where Joe Rigney is, Bethlehem College and Seminary. So there's an undergraduate degree there. I think they follow a lot of the same principles I'm going to talk about. And then there are only a few colleges that are doing that. So we're really describing something fairly unique and different. But let me just walk through this, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Okay, there's a few categories that I want to address with you guys when we talk about college. And one of the biggest ones is money. College costs a lot of money. And you're about to, as you move towards graduation, signing up for figuring out how to pay for something that is just massively expensive. And you've got to ask yourself, is this worth it? How do I go about doing it? How do I do this in a faithful way? What's the right way to go about financing college? Average tuition, if you go to a private Christian college, average tuition is around $35,000 annually. Okay, $35,000 annually, that's just for tuition. And then you have room and board. Remember all of those ping pong balls all add up. So $35,000 just gets you to tuition. Then you have room and board, travel, all the other things on top of that. That's a lot of money. That's a whole lot of money. It's interesting, though, if you look at over the past 30 years, if you were to look at how much medical services cost, and you plot sort of a line on a graph to show how much does medical care cost, and you did it for 30 years showing on average how it costs, you will notice it slowly increasing. Medical care has gotten more expensive. If you did the same thing with college education, you will see it increasing at twice the rate as medical care. Okay? College has doubled increase in expenses compared to medicine. And it's funny because over the last 30 years, there have been a lot of really nice advances in medical care, right? I really like the things I can get if I go to the hospital, I go to the doctor now that I couldn't have 30 years ago. I'm not so sure that we've really improved college education that much. But college is just getting more and more and more expensive. Now, I think there's one illusion here that you need to know about, and this will help you a lot as you start to look at colleges. And this is private schools, not public schools. So you've got your state universities, University of Idaho, Boise State University, Washington State Universities. Those are public colleges. Then you have private colleges. New St. Andrews is a private college. You've got in Spokane, is it Whitman or Gonzaga? Those are private colleges. BCS would be a private school. Now, I said earlier that average tuition at one of these private schools is around $35,000. That's not the case for NSA or BCS. We work to keep it really, really low. But at most of the private schools, it's going to be $35,000 or something like that annually. Now, you need to understand that all of these colleges practice something called discounting. And what it is you come to the college and you say, you apply and they accept you, and then they tell you it's $35,000, but the next thing you'll get is a letter telling you that you have been granted an incredible scholarship, $18,000 scholarship, and you will feel super impressive, right? Because first of all, you just got accepted to a really exclusive private school. How do you know that it was really exclusive? Because it's very expensive. And second of all, they wanted you so much that they gave you a huge scholarship, $18,000, $20,000 that they're giving to you. You just got $20,000 given to you, right? Okay, now here's the thing though. You need to understand that $20,000 does not exist. There is not a fund somewhere where they're taking $20,000 out of that account and applying it to your tuition. The $20,000 does not exist. All they did was they took their tuition price of $35,000 and they scratched it out and they changed it to $18,000 or $15,000 or whatever it was, less the scholarship. Okay? They just slashed their price down quite a bit. And they do that for almost everyone. So that $35,000 price, not very many people actually pay that. Very few people pay that. It's a very, very small percentage. Most people pay close to half of that. And they get that in the form of this scholarship, okay? It's kind of like, when you go to the store, let's say you're gonna go shopping for a sweater and there's a sweater there and it's normally $200, but today it's only $75. And you're like, oh, it's an amazing deal. It's an incredible deal. Nobody has ever paid $200 for that. It actually just costs $75. They list it at $200, they slash the price, they tell you it's $75, and you think you're getting a crazy steal. They do that with college education as well. So you see that tuition price of $35,000, you should be getting at least half of that probably back in a scholarship. And that's just what the actual price is. Okay, so after all that discounting has happened, we're still seeing the price of college skyrocket. It's still going up and up and up. So why is that happening? Okay, why is that happening? There's a pretty simple explanation for why the price of college is going way up. It's because the federal government gives all kinds of money to help with college tuition. All right, and it comes in two major forms. One is Pell Grants, and these are just a grant where you get $4,000, $5,000 just straight to you, a check for that much money when you start going to this college. You have to apply for it and qualify for it, but you'll get a $4,000 or $5,000 check each year to apply towards your tuition. It comes straight from the government. That's your Pell Grant. And then there's this other thing called a subsidized student loan. And what that means is the federal government comes in and helps you get a loan to cover your student loan, and the government pays the interest for it while you're in school. And then as soon as you're out of school, the debt is handed over for you and you have to pay it all off, okay? And so the government will make sure that you can get a loan and they'll give you this little gift. And they do this every year, and the amount in which they give out each year just keeps climbing, getting more and more and more. So in 2016, $43 billion were awarded in those federal grants, the Pell Grants, and another $95 billion in the federally subsidized student loans. Okay, so $43 billion in grants, $95 billion in student loans. And what's happened is, as the government has started throwing money at education, well, surprisingly, the tuition starts going way up. And this is a basic principle of business. If you talk with a businessman, this is one of the things that business guys will say behind the scenes to each other. They'll always say, look, you never leave money on the table. You never leave money on the table. And here's what that means. Let's say I'm selling a car, and I'm planning on selling it for $10,000. And you are coming and you're interested in buying the car, and I find out you want the car, and you didn't know I was asking $10,000. You actually came with $15,000 to pay for it. You were ready to pay $15,000. Well, the business guys will say, never leave money on the table. And that means the price just went up to $15,000. If you were gonna pay $15,000, I wanna make sure that my price matches what you were gonna pay, so I get all of that money, all right? Because otherwise you walk out with $5,000 that could have been mine for no extra effort, okay? So businesses work to try to price things at the level at which they can get the most out of you. That's just the way it works. Colleges work the same way. So what happens is, let's say the tuition is $12,000, but I just found out that the government gave you an extra $5,000 in a Pell Grant. Oh, what do you know? It's actually $17,000 as tuition this year. And then it turned out they approved for you to take out these loans, okay? And you can take out $10,000 a year in these loans. Oh, it just went up another it's $27,000. That's strange. I mean, tuition just keeps going up and up, because I'm not going to leave money on the table, because as long as you can come up with that money, that tuition price is going to keep going up, okay? And so that's why the tuition has just gone up and up and up, far faster than medical care or anything else, because we keep pumping all of this money into the system. The problem is that the bulk of that money is in student loans. It's money that you walk out of college still owing. Okay? You're going to walk out of college carrying that debt with you. All right? And what you got, all of the little extra things that you got for that tuition, for that extra $10,000, it's not anything in your education. You went to pay for the climbing wall, the lazy river on your campus, all sorts of strange bureaucratic offices that really added nothing to your educational experience. It's not improving your education that much, but it's leaving you deeper and deeper and deeper in debt. So here are some statistics on this. In 2009, the federal government owned less than $150 billion in outstanding debt from student loans. So 2009, the government owned $150 billion in debt. Students that owed the government for their student loans. $150 billion in 2009. As of 2016, that number is $1.5 trillion, okay? From $150 billion to $1.5 trillion in 7 years. Isn't that crazy? That's this thing, it's just going nuts, up and up and up. And colleges know that this thing is broken and it's spinning out of control, and they don't know how to stop it. They really don't know how to stop it, how to handle it. Right now, the average graduate currently walks out of college owing $37,000, okay? You walk out of college with your degree with a debt of $37,000, and you've got nothing, no collateral, there's no house behind that, there's no car behind it, $37,000 on you that's just gonna follow you wherever you go, that you've got to figure out how to pay back. And you should think for a moment about what carrying that kind of debt does to you. When they're showing the people trapped in those little ping pong cages, okay, there's something really real that is trying to communicate to you, and that is that when you're carrying debt like that, it restricts your freedom to do the things that you want to do. If you talk to people who give counsel to upper level college age students and younger, like early professional students in your church, ask them how often student debt comes up in the decisions that people are trying to make about their lives. You'll see that it actually steers people and really dictates the kinds of decisions that they're going to make. And here's what I mean. Let's say right now you are thinking, I really, really feel the call of the gospel. I really would love to be a preacher of the gospel. I would love to share the gospel to other people. And you're thinking of when you graduate from college, going into ministry, missionary field, going into pastoral work, and going to serve in some sort of fashion. Okay? You can't. You can't now. You can't because you have a large debt payment that you have to make. You must go get a certain kind of job to pay the debt. Many of the missionary organizations can't even consider you until all of your debt is gone. You got to be debt free before they can even consider you. And you've closed off that whole avenue. If any of you are thinking, I really would love to be a teacher. I see this private Christian school and I see the difference in lives that these teachers are making in the lives of these kids. I would love to be that kind of person. You can't. Because you can't afford it. Those people are giving up so much. They sacrifice. They take small salaries so that they can be in this position where they minister to kids. And you can't take that small salary when you're carrying that debt, right? Another one, I don't know how many times I've talked to people who are interested in getting married. They want to get married. They want to start having kids and start a family. They can't because of all the debt that they're carrying. And it slows down their ability to start a family, to get married, to have kids. It's crazy how much debt will close doors for you. So when you see those people trapped in those little cages, that's what those cages are about. You've got certain life decisions that have been taken away from you because you take up that much debt. And the sad thing is, as I mentioned before, the increased spending, it hasn't gone towards, a significantly improved education. In fact, in many places, I'd say it's actually lowered the quality of the education. It lowers the quality of education because they're no longer thinking about the actual educational experience. They're thinking about all the amenities and bling on their college campus when that will attract you. And so you rack up this massive debt in order to pay for facilities to make you feel good when you first get there, which after you've been there for a few months, you now consider to be kind of silly and a distraction from the actual educational experience. So we've racked up all this debt, and I think we've actually decreased the quality of our colleges. But I think the most alarming thing, and like all of that is kind of grim and scary, but the most alarming consequence, I think, of the government money is that every time you take one of those checks, what happens is the college becomes obligated to the federal government in ways that they weren't before. So if the federal government says, here's how you need to set up the bathrooms on your campus, okay? And we're not gonna let, and boys can use girls' bathrooms, girls can use boys' bathrooms. If the government says that, then you as a school have to say that if you want that money, all right? And until you're ready to say no to the money, they have a hold on you and you have to follow the decisions that they're making. And we've seen this already in a number of different schools where Christian schools are having to compromise on their principles because they have to keep the money. The sad thing is, right now at private schools, this isn't public schools, at private schools, the private Christian schools get more money each year from the federal government than they do tuition checks from mom and dad. So it's easier for them to give up tuition than it is for them to give up the federal money. So when the federal government says, here's how you're going to talk about homosexuality, here's how you're going to talk about marriage, here's how you're going to talk about gender, they have to figure out a way to obey and do what the government is saying because they can't afford to lose that money. Under the Obama administration, we started getting these letters. They were called the Dear Colleague letters. And what they were doing was they were taking, because of Title IX, they were taking all of the definitions and requirements about minorities and everything, and then started applying it to gender and sexuality. And so you could, you would be in trouble if if you had a principled stance against homosexuality at your school, you would be in trouble for that. Now, those have been pulled back under the current administration, but a number of other things are still there, and we're waiting to see what will happen under the next administration. So those are some of the big challenges that you're looking at with regard to money. I think of I'll skip some of that. But let me give you just a couple of takeaways as you think about the financial situation that you're looking at. Okay, so the first takeaway is don't be fooled by that initial scholarship letter that you get. Okay, don't be fooled by that. It's something that everybody is getting, or almost everybody is getting. It's not a whole bunch of money. It's what you were going to get just for having a pulse. Okay, so don't be fooled by that initial scholarship letter. Second, it is possible to graduate college with no debt. Okay, it is possible to make it through college in a careful, principled way with no debt. And if you do, the freedom that you have to live faithfully after graduation will be so worth any sacrifices you had to make in order to get yourself there. The freedom to start a family, to be married, to go into ministry, to take a position that is more fulfilling to you and your calling. All of those freedoms are there for you if you can make it through college with no debt. So let me encourage you to figure out how can I do this in a principled way so I can finish school without that hanging over my head, or at least a very minimal amount of debt. I'll just say this really carefully here. I don't think debt in and of itself is a sin. Okay? I don't think it's a sinful thing to go into debt. We borrow to buy a house. I think that's okay. What I think you have to be careful about is don't be naive about how significant of a commitment it is. And this is the thing that's really tragic about the way the student loans work, is that it's preying on people who are just beginning their financial independence, and it's preying on them by giving them the, I think, one of the most dangerous pieces, which is easy debt. Okay, after you graduate from college, I find it unlikely that you will ever be in a situation where somebody will offer you debt as easily as they do when you go to college. Right now, if I wanted to get the kind of loan that you could get as a college student, I couldn't get that. I can't get that anymore. All right, all those restrictions that were beyond me, they're taken away for you. So it's really, really easy for you to go into debt and to just max it out. Okay, they're throwing it at you like it was candy, and there are students who just eat it up, not realizing the consequences are coming. So I don't think it's evil to go into debt, and it may be that you need to take some sort of small loan, but minimize it as much as possible and see if it's possible to do it without any debt. And there are a lot of schools that structure themselves in such a way that you can make it through with no debt. I know you can at BCS, at NSA. If you have a tuition of, say, $12,700, what will be next year, you could get a scholarship for a couple of those thousand. If you get a summer job where you're able to come up with $4,000, and your parents, I'm assuming they're paying something like $400 a month right now for your schooling. If they're able to do that, you basically have the entirety of the tuition with no debt right there. So it's totally feasible. It's totally feasible to make it through school without debt, and I would encourage you to figure out a way to do that. And then the other thing is just realize the more dependent a college is on government money, the more you know that they're going to be hostile to your faith in one way or another. That's just the way it works out. The more dependent they are, the more you can see that this is going to be a place that's going to be hostile to your faith. And you want to look for some form of independence. Now, there's the financial picture of where we are in the world of college education. I want to talk to you also about another sort of big question, and I think that's the why question. Why go to college? Why do you do that? This goes back to my first thing. Maybe college isn't even for you. Maybe college is the wrong decision for you. So ask yourself, why do you go to college? Why do you go to college? Over the last 50 years, there's been a real shift in how we think about what college is for, what's the purpose of a college education, what's the purpose of education in general. There's been this shift over the past 50 years. Previously, we saw college as a particular kind of training for cultural leaders. Okay? College was intended as this particular kind of training that was supposed to be for people in leadership positions. You could train for jobs in any number of ways, but if you're looking for a more leadership type position, you ended up going to college. Over the last 50 years, it's changed, and now college is more and more about, first of all, it's for everybody. There's this kind of emphasis that everybody has to go to college. And second of all, there's this idea that your college degree is attached to the kind of job you want to get. Do you notice this? This is this assumption that everybody has, and it's a really funny one because if you go out and just look at the data for a moment, it's pretty easy to demonstrate that this is completely false. This is completely false, but people think that the name of your degree is going to match up with the name of this job you're going to get. And so what you can do is you can say, well, since I want to have that job, I will get a degree with this name, and then I'm set. Okay? It sounds very sensible. It does. The problem is you go out in the real world, that's not the way it works at all. People, they get out of college, they might start there for the first year or two, but then they go sideways, they go left, they go right, they discover new things that they're interested in. They grow more interested in something that they never even thought of when they were in college, and they head in new directions. Or they discover that this thing that they thought they would like, they get there and it turns out they hate it, they're no good at it, they don't want to have anything to do with it. And you find that people are much more fluid than this idea that, like, I'll get this degree, it'll make me this kind of person and get me that job and move on. And second of all, the other thing that's screwy about it is the truth is, and this is the sort of the truth that they hide from you, is that when you show up to work, you find that most of what you studied in college was not necessary for the job that you have. And the things that you need to learn in order to perform the job that they give you, you didn't learn them in college. You learn them in the first 6 months on the job, okay? So there's this kind of myth that this degree will teach me how to do that work and it'll put me in that job and I'll be trained to perform that job. When you go through college and then go into the workforce, you'll find there's actually quite a lot of myths there. Okay, I did a chemistry degree in my undergraduate with a focus on education, so I could go in and be a high school teacher. Took all these education classes in college. None of them prepared me whatsoever for teaching. What taught me how to teach was being plunked into a classroom and told to teach them. That's when I learned how to teach. Okay, and that's the truth with, I think, most jobs. It works out like that. So if that's the case, what is the purpose of a college education? Because it's not the case that the college is worthless. I really think actually a college education is extremely, extremely fruitful, extremely beneficial, but not for the reasons that they make it out to be. Okay, it's a much more profound and interesting kind of thing that's happening at college. Let me illustrate it this way. So I said that the college education, when it was 50 years ago, it was about creating a certain kind of leader. There was a certain sort of training that went into creating a leader. That's not necessary when you're just the guy taking the orders. So to illustrate this, I mentioned yesterday that when I graduated from high school, I go into enlisted in the Marine Corps. So I am, an E1 private in the Marine Corps, and that meant that and this is so yesterday when you were having the tank war. There was a little fond spot in my heart for that because when I graduated from boot camp, I went on and I did tank school, and I was a tanker in the Marine Corps on an M1A1 tank. So I have to go to tank school, and they're teaching you how to run the tank. And when they're teaching me how to run the tank, everything that they teach me is a set of instructions. It's a list of tasks, and here's how to perform it, and everything, absolutely everything they gave to me was crystal clear sets of instructions with very, very, very little freedom for improvisation, free thinking, whatever. It was, if you have a tank that has thrown the track, the tread that goes around, these are the steps that you go through. If you're going to clean the gun tube on the main gun, these are the steps you're going to go through. And everything was like that. And that's not bad. It's not bad. It was actually exactly the kind of instruction and teaching I needed. I was an idiot, okay? I was a very young enlisted Marine idiot. All of us were. And we should not have been given any freedom for anything, right? We were there to be told exactly what to do, to follow orders very specifically. That's how you create Marines. I mean, how do you get a group of men to charge, a bunker with a machine gun, mowing them down? Well, you get a group of men who learn how to take orders and follow them very, very carefully without any free thinking, okay? That's the only way you create that kind of man. Now, there was another guy in our group who would be the commanding officer. All right, there was always an officer in the group. He's the one with the shiny stuff on his collar that you had to salute and say yes, sir, to. Okay, he received a very different education. He received the education of an officer. He received the education of a leader. His education was full of how do you think clearly in moments of intense conflict? How do you come up with a creative, innovative solution that surprises the enemy, that surprises everyone, that captures everything that's going on in your unique circumstance and make a quick snap decision? And then how do you turn and command with authority and clarity and persuasion a group of men who are all not very bright, all right? And you have to just in a second, you have to make them move and do exactly what you want. And then how do you, be able to adjust in the middle of a situation where nothing is going the way it was supposed to have gone? This is a very different kind of education. This is the education of a leader, all right? And it requires this clear, critical thinking, this ability to distinguish between what's just the background noise and what's the central point. It requires the ability to hear and understand exactly what's going on and to turn around and persuade others with clarity and persuasion and make them do exactly what it is you want them to do. He gets a very different education. He gets the education of a leader, okay? These are two fundamentally different ways at looking at what kind of education you're getting. Do you want to be trained to follow tasks, or do you want to be trained to lead others? Okay? It's two fundamentally different kinds of tasks. One of them focuses on being certified. Okay? Do you know how to perform these tasks? Are you qualified to do this? Do you know how to use that welder? Do you know how to, drive that backhoe? Do you know how to perform these tasks? Okay? It's a set list of tasks. And there's nothing wrong with that because frequently we need to be equipped to perform certain functions. There's nothing wrong with that. But it is a kind of certification. This kind of training over here is an education. It's about thinking clearly. It's about developing your mind, your ability to make decisions, your ability to communicate, to listen, and to persuade. All right, that's an education, whereas this is a certification. So as you kind of fill these classes out, think about this. If you are certified, you're qualified to perform a list of tasks associated with a certain career. Okay, you follow these certain tasks. If you're educated, you're trained to think broadly and critically about a whole host of matters. All right, you're thinking critically, coming up with new ideas. This guy, you don't want him coming up with new ideas. This guy, you do. If you're certified, you are employable. Okay, you can go out and you can say, I know how to do these things. Do you have a job for me? Do you need somebody to perform these functions? You're employable. If you're educated, it's different. You're influential. You're not looking for somebody to give you the job. You're looking to see what you can create, what you can do, how you can change things, how you can move things. It's funny, we're always worried about how many jobs are out there. How many jobs are people hiring? Are there jobs out there? How many jobs were there when the Pilgrims landed on the East Coast for the first time? How many jobs there, right? 0. Nobody was hiring. Nobody was hiring. How much work was there? How much room, how much scope to create a new world was there? There's all kinds of work, all kinds of scope, all kinds of room to do something. So you see, this guy that's certified is looking for a job, but it's what you do when you're the hireling, right? This guy over here is being trained to be the free person and is not concerned about other people giving him a job. He's concerned about what he's going to make for the world, how he's going to change the world. And I would encourage you to think about in what way are you preparing yourself to be a free person, to go and change the world, to persuade the world, to move, how about you be the one to create jobs for others? Can you be that person, the one who finds the place that nobody thought of and you're creating jobs for others? All right? It's a difference. You've got a hireling and you've got a free person. You've got certified in a real education. You've got this idea of being a free man, a free woman over here. This side is ready to follow orders. This side is ready to give orders. You want to look for chances to be that free person. I mean, that's what the founding fathers on the East Coast, when they first landed, they were free people, and they didn't need somebody else to come along and give them a job. They created jobs for others. Okay, so let me just break down the takeaways from that as we walk through that for a moment. Getting trained to do a certain job is a good thing, all right? You all probably have a number of those jobs ahead of you. And you need to take those jobs, and you need to do it humbly, and you need to work through it and do it your very best to the glory of God. I had a lot of those jobs. I washed dishes, I bagged groceries. I caught fish up in Alaska one summer. I worked on a boat picking fish out of a net until I couldn't even open my fingers anymore. I had a lot of those kinds of jobs. Enlisted in the Marine Corps. I did a lot of that peon kind of stuff that I needed to do. Really, really important. There's nothing bad about that. It's very noble to serve God that way. But in the midst of all that, you want to start thinking about, okay, but what does it look like to move from being this person that gets all these orders and receives all these orders to being the person who can step forward and think of the new thing and lead in a new direction and give direction to these people and hire them to work for me so that I can expand God's kingdom. Right, so there's nothing wrong with this kind of job, but you want to look for a chance to actually grow into a more free position. And then the other thing that I think is an important takeaway is leadership skills are different than job skills. Leadership skills are different than job skills. And that corresponds to two completely different ways of thinking about education. Are you looking at, with your degree, nailing a certain job? All right, you're looking for job skills. Or are you looking for something that's going to challenge your mind and grow you in a new direction so that you can become a leader, a cultural leader of some sort? That is one of the things that's at the foundation of this idea of the liberal arts curriculum. So if we have any Latin gurus out there, what does the Latin word liber mean? Liber. It's a free man. Okay? A liber is a free man. As opposed to the hireling. A liber is a free man. And the liberal arts is the liber arts. It's the skills that go into creating a free man and a free woman. And so it focuses less on vocation-specific skills and focuses more on developing the habits and skills of leadership. That's why if you're in the liberal arts, you're going to be doing philosophy, literature, you're going to be doing history, classical languages. What you're doing is you're trying to get your mind to the point where you're capable of hearing very carefully exactly what's going on. Not what you just wish the person said, but what they actually said, which is frequently a very different thing. It's a real art to learn the difference between those two things. But really listening and reading with a critical and discerning eye and ear, being able to think critically, being able to think with clarity as you walk through what's going on, and then being able to communicate, to be able to write, to get up in front and speak and lead others in the direction you're going. Those are the skills of leadership. It's funny because NSA offers a degree in liberal arts. People often say, yeah, what are you going to do with a degree in liberal arts? You'll go and be a liberal artist, right? So are they employing liberal artists out there? Well, if we thought that the name of the degree needed to match the name of the job, then I suppose that's what we're trying to train people for. But that's not it. We're trying to give you the skills of leadership, of cultural leadership. So if we had to name it I think I would name it World Dominion. That's the name of the degree. All right. So that's why there's this significance to that liberal arts core. BCS does something very similar with a strong liberal arts curriculum throughout. You're trying to create cultural leaders. Last point that I want to hit, and that is, don't underestimate the significance of those 4 years at college. A lot of people think that, my parents sacrificed to give me this strong classical Christian education, grades K through 12. So all of that foundation has been poured. Now I'm ready to go out. And these next 4 years, the foundation has been poured. Nothing's going to change now. The next 4 years, this is just going to build on that foundation, and nothing big will happen in those years. It's really funny because when I talk to parents who feel like, okay, we've done the education up through K to 12, they go off to college, are ready for anything, and nothing will change, what we've already poured. Well, ask, any crowd of people, 35 years and up, and just say, were the 4 years at college like really insignificant for you? You know, did with regard to like your Christian faith, did very little happen in those 4 years of college? Did nothing happen there? Or is it possible that during those 4 years of college is where you either became a Christian, figured out what it meant to be a Christian, dramatically matured as a Christian, came to a fuller understanding of your theological position as a Christian? Most people will say those 4 years, something really, really big happened. Or during those 4 years of college, does that have no bearing on your current family life? Right? Did nothing happen in those 4 years with regard to where your family is now? For good or for ill, did something significant happen in those years? And pretty much everybody will say, that's when I met her. That's when we got married. That's when all the important things that happened that set you up for the families that they're in now. These are really, really significant years. And so it matters that you choose a context in which you're ready to be faithful, right? In which you're ready to really be on a firm foundation in Christ. That doesn't mean it has to be a Christian school. I know that there are people who go to state schools and find strong Christian fellowship in the midst of that state school. But it does mean that you have to really think about it and really be careful about it and make sure that you're planning ahead and thinking hard about what it will look like for you to be living as a Christian on campus. A recent Barna survey said that approximately 70% of those students who are engaged in church activity in high school have ceased being engaged in church by the end of their freshman year in college. 70% of these kids who are active as Christians at church in high school, by the end of their freshman year, are no longer going to church, no longer thinking of themselves as Christian. They're gone. 70%. Think about that. That's like basically this section over, gone, okay? In 1 year, we have no idea how hostile the college environment is right now to Christians. Okay? We have no idea how hostile it is. Another survey, Southern Baptist survey, said they lose between 70 and 88% of their students in the first year of college. There's another research survey that says that a college degree means you are less likely to be serious about your faith than if you just had a high school degree. The further you go, you go and you get a college degree, you are less likely to be serious about your faith. Why is that? Because colleges are undermining your faith right now. And so you really want to think about what is the world that I'm going into? What is the circumstances that I'm going into? Are they going to strengthen my faith, or are they going to work to undermine my faith? Right now, as a college student, you're more likely to be smoking pot regularly than tobacco, right? You're more likely to be having a joint than a cigarette at a typical college right now. And here in Moscow, we have, if you drive west from here, it goes Walmart and then marijuana shops, right? That is just taken off like crazy on the college campus. And at least 1 out of 5 college-age women will have had an abortion during their time at college. That's a really tragic and significant number. Okay, so you want to make sure that as you think about where you're going to college, you're asking the questions to make sure you're going into a faithful environment. That's why I think you should really strongly consider college. It takes very seriously the formation of your Christian character. And like I said, I don't think Christian colleges are your only option. In fact, to be honest, there are the majority of colleges that present themselves as Christian colleges are probably worse than the state schools. I mean, it's the sad case. And I've spent a lot of time seeing the sort of landscape, and it's getting really, really grim, I think. So don't underestimate how significant the decision is. So here, let me give you a couple of suggestions for how you think about college, how you think about picking a college. The first thing I would say is visit a college. Be sure to go and actually visit a few schools and see what it's really like. And when you do that, you want to try to stay with some students at that school over a weekend and find out what is the actually look like to be here on a Friday night and a Saturday night as a college student. Don't get the Don't get the tour where they're kind of, sort of keeping you away from the actual students so that you don't know what's really going on. Make sure you get to stay with some students. Your parents might say, no, we would never let you do that. And if that's the case, then that's probably the wrong college completely, because they're contemplating a decision to send you there completely. But if you want to really know the school, go and stay with some students and figure out what's the actual spiritual climate like. And be honest with yourself about how you will do in that setting. I remember one girl that ended up coming to NSA. She went to this one school for a prospective student weekend, did exactly that, stayed with some students, and she came back and came straight to NSA and enrolled at NSA. And she said, I knew myself, and I knew that if I was in that setting for 4 years, that would have been the end of my faith. I would have been destroyed. She was honest with herself and knew that it wasn't the place for her. Another thing, go with your parents to walk through the bookstore and look at the actual books that are being assigned, and look at them, read them, and ask yourself, if this is what you're taught, will you be more or less godly? Right? Is it going to steer you in a faithful direction? Another question is, does the college have a spine? Does the college have guts? There are so many political forces right now aimed at colleges that you want to know you have a college that will actually stand up against it, that has a spine and will weather that kind of storm. Does the college have a spine? This is where I think that decision to take federal money or not is a really important one. There are a handful of schools out there that have all refused to take federal money. We're one of them, and there are a number of other schools around that won't take the federal money. That's the kind of decision that I think is really important, that says, okay, we're not going to allow ourselves to be compromised by the strings that are attached to that money. There are a lot of solid options out there. Okay, there really are. It's not just here in Moscow. And I think that it's possible to go to a state school and have a fantastic experience. You just need to really know what you're getting into and make sure that you have the support network there to do well. And I think college can be an incredible time of growing maturity. I mean, I described the sort of carnage, the wreckage of all the people falling away from the faith. Well, those that are actually staying in the faith, this is a time of incredible growth and maturity. It's a really, really wonderful thing, and especially if you're able to really get those skills of cultural leadership. But do the hard work. Do the hard work now of getting information about the choices that are in front of you. Don't find yourself, in early August finally making, a decision about the college. You want to do the hard work. Start now and start looking at your options so you can think critically about each of these and have time to maybe visit some of these schools and see what the spiritual flavor is like on those campuses. Do that work, and I think you'll find that you can actually turn it into something that is a deep, deep, deep blessing. Okay, I'm going to close in prayer. Heavenly Father, we do pray for your Spirit to be with each of these students as they think about these difficult things. Lord, we know that you're the one that holds the future in the palm of your hand. We know that you're the one that's guarding all of these things, and we commit it to you. But I pray that you'd make us wise as we think through these decisions, and that you would direct our paths. I pray for your blessing on each of these students, that you'd be growing them up into real maturity, into the full stature of Christ. I pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.